Excellent. Lovely. Okay, look, I just firstly want to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land of which we're meeting today, and I pay my respects to elders past, present and future. And I'm currently on the Dark and Young land. Also have to acknowledge the New South Wales State Government for funding this event. It's part of Small Business Month, so we're one of the last events for the month. It's the first time we've done this, but we're sort of quite happy to be able to bring this to you today. In terms of the agenda, I'll just pop this up here. There you go. We'll just do a little bit of a few introductions. We'll just talk about why forecast and planning are important. We'll cover off the sales and operations planning and business planning processes, and then really focusing on demand and process and looking how to build a forecast. So I'm not going to take too much thunder away from Agi, who's going to be presenting most of this. But yeah, we are going to focus on one part of what they call the sales and operations planning process. You might ask, the reason why we decided to do this is that in our role, so Central Coast Industry Connect, which most of you would know, where we support manufacturing on the Central Coast. And we come across a lot of businesses that are scaling up, growing, and we always, well, not always, but most times we find that not enough thought has been given to what the business might look like in 12 to 18 months' time. And so we always encourage people to sit down with their accountants and look at, how can they, where their sales growth is going to come from, and what are the opportunities that, to drive that sales growth. So that forecasting component is important. That's important to any business, but as you're scaling up and growing, it's even more critical. And it has a lot of impacts. It has impact on customer. It has impacts on, labour planning, capital expense, financial planning. Even going to the bank, you'll need to provide a forecast if you wanted to borrow money to fund your operation. And, on the day-to-day stuff, it's around materials planning. And strategically, it has a big input into business planning. So I think, without knowing where your sales are coming from, it's really hard to decide where your business is going to go. So that's why we're doing this. We certainly, as I see this in our day-to-day work, and it's an opportunity for people to understand the process of forecasting and planning with an aim to secure your business going forward. So look, we're not professed to know everything. We've got a mix of businesses here, predominantly in the food space. And we've got some businesses that are quite mature when we look at what they're already doing in this space. And we've got businesses that are just sort of starting off. And so, they'll have a lot of value in terms of spurring them on. For those that are mature, it's probably more about seeing what tools can be employed, other opportunities in terms of really fine-tuning your forecasting. We don't have a lot of slides, so this is going to be fairly interactive, and we're really engaging and asking you to engage and ask questions as we go along. Look, we might be using terms that you don't understand or acronyms. Please pipe up if you don't understand what we're saying. So because we've got a mix of businesses, we will probably use food examples, but we can then talk about how they might apply to the non-food sector. So what else can I say? I think really that's about it. If you can mute your microphones for those who are there. So what I'm going to do now is we'll start the process. I'm going to hand over to Agi. I've known Agi for, I'm just trying to work this out, probably back to the early 90s, and worked with him in the operations area. And he's certainly comes, with a lot of experience, FMCG experience, particularly in the food sector. He's worked with PepsiCo and Campbell Soups and Arnott's Biscuits. I recently, in a consulting role, also worked with him at Greens, and he's had a lot of experience in this area. So that's why I've asked him to come along and have a chat to us about what he does in this space. And hopefully he'll be able to share his experiences, and likewise you can share your experiences with us and others in the room, so we can get some benefit out of this. The presentation will be available at the end of this, together with the recording. And I did send a link, and I will resend a link for a survey which the government has asked us to ask you to fill out, to ensure that these sort of events are improved year on year. So looking forward to hopefully an interactive session. Now, we had 2 hours down for this. It really depends on how much interaction we get from you, we could end up finishing up early, but that's fine as long as you're getting what you need out of it. Then we'll go from there. So I'm going to hand over to Agi, and we'll start the presentation from his end. Thanks, Agi.
All right.
Sorry,
thank you. Yeah.
what I should do, I forgot to. The very key thing at the start is just quickly go around the room as to who you are and what you do. So I'm going to start with Brian. You're the first on my list, Brian. An interesting business. You'll just unmute yourself. You're still on mute, Brian. We'll just move on until we come back to Brian. So, Alex.
Morning, everyone. Thanks, Frank. For those I haven't met, I'm Alex Blow. I work with Frank at CCIC. I work predominantly with the food and beverage manufacturing network on the coast. I've been involved in forecasting in a number of my roles in food businesses, and I'm joining the session because I'm curious to understand some of the particular tensions or challenges local food businesses particularly are having around demand planning and forecasting. Thanks.
Kieran? Hello, Kieran, you there? Yep.
Yeah, sorry, I was just unmuting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've in my previous roles, I was looking after 4 sites in salads across Australia. S&OP was a big part of it. I have done little bits. We're much smaller now in this startup, much simpler in terms of our product mix. But interesting, given I've not touched it or been as close to it for probably 4 years now, and I've set up my own mini version. Interested to see what else is out there, because the one I used and learnt was from one person and one operation. So interested to see what else is being done and other nuances to it.
Right. Thanks, Kieran. Garth.
Sorry, I'm on my phone. My name is Garth, and with my wife Michelle, we run Spirals Fermented Foods. We've been going for about 4 years here at our little facility at Tuggerah Business Park. We make a lot of different types of fermented foods, sauerkrauts, drinks, that sort of. We started from home, pretty much on the kitchen bench, and we branched out into markets. And then we started actually getting into some stores, and that's when we started to think that this could be a way forward, for the business when we moved here. And it's been a pretty exciting space for us, with lots of opportunities coming our way.
Right, thanks, Garth. Sabrina.
Hi everyone, my name is Sabrina. I work for Warland Legal. The reason why I'm interested in this webinar is because we help a lot of small business owners in China, and I'm wondering whether I can build some connections here on the coast, seeking some opportunities for them. So that's why I'm in.
Thank you. Daniel?
G'day guys. Yeah, my name's Dan Ireland. I'm a chartered accountant here at Cutcher & Neal. I implement software solutions for a range of clients, particularly in the manufacturing and wholesale distribution space. So I'm just interested here to see what, I guess, challenges businesses are having, particularly around the demand planning stage, and yeah, really observe and see what's happening out there in the real world.
Right, thank you. Anthea? You there, Anthea? I'll just move on to Graham.
Yeah, hi guys. My name's Graham. I'm the production manager for East Coast Beverages. We've been running an S&OP process for the last roughly 18 months to 2 years, which is sort of fairly new for the business. And Bruce and I are here today just for looking for a few tips and tricks to see whether there's anything out there that can help fine-tune our existing processes.
Great. Thanks, Graham. And Bruce, if you want just to say who you are, and obviously Graham's already given a
yes, you've got my name. So my role is procurement manager, and obviously S&OP is important because I need to plan what we're doing for raw materials and packaging and so on that comes into the business. So the more information that we've got and the more science we can put behind what we do, the better off the business will be. Happy to learn as much as we can today.
Great, thanks, Bruce. And finally, Joel.
Hey guys, I'm Joel from the Marshmallow Co. Similar story to what Garth was saying with Spirals. We started off from home, small. We've never really done much financial planning up until this year when we got a new accountant. And I really enjoyed that process when we sat with him for a couple of hours. So I'm really keen to see what you've got to show us in this one.
Right, thanks, Joel. Look, we've had another 10 people which haven't logged in. So anyway, look, we'll obviously share this recording with them as well. But we've got a mix of businesses. So Brian, can you hear us at all or not? We can't hear you. You're still on mute. There we go. Just want to. Okay.
Did you want to, Frank, try the chat option to see whether he can? Yeah,
I'll just ask him to mute.
All right.
I know a little bit of his business. He sent some information through there in the swimming pool game, and they have a particular, I'll have to get it up. But Brian, can you hear us at all or not? Just maybe wave your hand if you can hear us. He's having trouble. Okay. And Anthony, Anthony, are you there? Okay. All right. We'll just keep going. Oh, here we go. Anthony's back on. You're right. You there?
Yeah.
Sorry, mate. Yeah. Just want to give an overview who you are.
Right. I'm the production manager here at Fairhaven at Tuggerah Business Park. We do a bit of co-manufacturing for a few companies around the coast. And I guess in my role, we do manage stock levels for some of our customers. So I guess some of this could be helpful to me trying to manage that for them and keep our business to growing too, I guess.
Okay, great. Fantastic. I see Brian's unmuted himself. So do you want to just give an overview of your business, Brian?
Yeah, Frank, you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Yeah, it's a bit crackly, but we can.
Yeah, I make a swim belt. Well, it's actually a harness. It goes around your waist, but you've got to have your own swimming pool, right? I've thought about, maybe if you buy one, I'll chuck in a free pool, but I don't think that'll work too well for me.
No.
The whole idea is to swim in your own pool without having to do laps. And I've always been a swimmer, and been doing this now for about 12 years or so. My biggest market is the Australian market, of course, but also sold some through Amazon to America. A couple of years ago, I tried Europe, and these days I stayed out of Europe because of the VAT bloody problems that they have there. Got a couple of ideas to expand it. Hence, I'm very interested in your program.
Okay, excellent. Great. All right. Well, it's good. So we got, like I say, quite a mixed bag of people here, which is great. And yeah, we'll head over to Agi now. And Agi, if you want to start your presentation, and
sure,
we'll get some discussion happening, hopefully.
Yeah, absolutely. So as Frank said, look, it's nice to meet you all. And I can see from your introductions that you've all got various maturities in your planning. So it'll be, through your journey. So it'll be interesting to get your views as we go through this journey as well together. So let me just share my desktop. All right, can you guys all see that?
Yep.
Yep.
Okay, cool. Let me just put it into, I'll try and get into slideshow mode. Okay. All right, so obviously, have you guys heard the term integrated business planning by any chance? Any of you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, good. So the evolution of planning is very much, I'll give you an example of, Frank will remember this, when I started at Frito-Lay. I remember my very first experience of production planning, where we were getting orders from Coles and Woolworths, and we had a 5-day need sheet, which basically looked out 5 days. And it told the production planners what the orders were. And what we'd do is we'd look at the orders, we plan our production, and we plan a bit of extra stock on the SKUs that we thought we were willing to take a risk on. So that's just the start of planning in terms of S&OP. That was very much operations planning. There was no sales involvement at all. And it was pretty much the production planner making a call on what stock to build based off customer orders. So obviously that whole process has evolved from operations planning into sales and operations planning, where effectively you're getting the involvement of sales in the whole S&OP cycle, the sales and operations planning cycle. And then the next evolution, obviously, from sales and operations planning, where you're really looking at planning your supply chain in units, is to really take it to integrated business planning, where you're really starting to now look at your supply chain in dollars. So in the form of either GSV, gross sales, or even net sales, or even potentially profit. So realistically, planning has evolved, and the terms kind of changed a little bit. And so integrated business planning is really S&OP, but more in kind of financial terms, if anything. So I'm sure some of you are aware of that, but I just thought I'd just go through that very quickly in terms of those cycles. Okay. All right. So the first thing that you guys are all familiar with, that you've all talked about, is this whole concept of sales and operations planning across people, process, and systems. So obviously, the key in any S&OP process or integrated business planning process is people, right? And all of you seem to have businesses that are varying sizes. So the size of your planning team pretty much can dictate the S&OP process across business. And you find with most fast-moving consumer good businesses, they've got fairly big planning teams, in some, depending on the size of the business. So for example, at Arnott's, we used to have close to 7 demand planners looking after demand planning. We had about 4 supply planners looking after supply planning. And then we had the factories with their materials planners in there. Whereas somewhere like Greens, we had a single demand planner looking after demand planning and a supply planner looking after supply plus manufacturing planning. But the bottom line with all of this is, regardless of the number of people, it's pretty much people drive process and systems enable process in terms of support, right? So any questions on this first slide by anyone? No?
Yeah, so
right.
for a small business, if you're like a 2 or 3 people business, and really it's the owner's going to be doing most of that work.
Yeah.
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 Do any of you have any examples of the, I mean, can any of you tell me how many people are doing your planning for you? Like I think a couple of you said, your production managers and procurement managers, but anyone in the audience that actually is responsible for the planning process here?
Yeah, well, I do my own planning.
You do your own plan, you do the whole bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's sort of one-off. Yeah, it's a sort of one-off business line.
Right. And Brian, do you?
One of the things that we're trying to do with East Coast is that it's just not one person who actually looks after it, and trying to get the sales marketing side to drive the data input, certainly because it's the most important part and we're the hardest probably to predict.
Yeah.
To actually give data and then own that data, because it flows through to, I guess, the nuts and bolts people, the production people and the purchasing people, logistics people. So, their decisions that they make on a daily, monthly basis are coming from, data that's probably 80% accurate at best.
Yes.
Trying to share the load, so responsibility of everybody's.
Yeah, and I mean, and Bruce, you hit on a very key piece about accuracy, and I'll get into talking a little bit about that when we talk about demand planning. But one of the things I've learned through my experience is that a forecast will never be right? It's always going to be proven wrong. It's just a question of how right it is. So you're right with the whole 80, with that 80% rule. It's that good old 80-20 rule. So the other thing also is, I just want to ask from a systems perspective, what different types of systems are you guys using? Are most of you using Excel, or do some of you have transaction systems that can do the whole planning, the materials planning process, just to get an idea?
Yeah,
Mostly using data from the ERP system and using Excel.
Great. That's the model I've seen the most of. Anyone else that's just using Excel for everything?
Yeah, I do.
Right. Okay.
Yeah,
So
we pretty much use Excel as well.
Right. Cool. I mean, look, I have pretty much, Excel's a great tool. It's such a great business intelligence tool. It's so highly flexible. Everyone knows it, and you can do so much with it. So I've seen pretty much transaction systems integrating into Excel, and that's the example I'm going to walk you through later. So we'll see how we go through this. All right, great. Okay. So the next slide is around push and pull supply chains. So I'm sure you guys understand some of these concepts very well, and forgive me if I'm repeating some of this, but it's a very important concept that I wanted to just go through. So effectively, like I said earlier with the Frito-Lay example, where we just started off production, the production planners were pretty much determining what to make. That was very much a push supply chain where literally, you would push inventory into the supply chain and then hope it sells. And that process is, of course, you end up with a lot of unnecessary inventory, and it's very reactive, and you have very poor utilization of assets because you're really doing things pretty much just in time, if not just a bit late in some cases. So really, where S&OP comes in is to turn your supply chain into a push supply chain to more a pull supply chain where it's demand driven. And the benefits of obviously pull supply chains is because you're demand driven, you tend to be a bit lean. Your inventory is made to a forecast. Of course, like Bruce said earlier, you're only going to get 80% of your forecast right. So there's still going to be an element of unnecessary inventory. But the reality is that whole 80-20 rule where your 80% of your supply chain, you're getting your forecast accuracy on it, and you're effectively having good inventory management through that whole process. The other big benefit of pull supply chains with forecasting is you have proactive asset planning and management as well in terms of capacity planning. So I'm interested to find out from the audience, like, how much of you guys think you're push versus pull? and anyone that feels this in the push stage still, or are most of you sitting in a demand-driven supply chain?
I would say that somewhere in between those, some products we're sort of just pushing and making inventory on the basis that we may get some sales for it, but obviously trying to move to that the pull demand-driven process, because shelf life is obviously important for the products that we make.
Yeah, and Bruce, that's a very key point that you hit. Shelf life is a key driver of wanting to be in a pull mode, because as in food, it's got an expiry date, so effectively you want to hold as little as possible and keep your inventory fresh, which is always good for your customers. And at the same time, it's good in terms of not having to be written off. So effectively, what SNOP enables is to take you away from push pretty much to a pull process. Any questions on this slide? Okay, so what I'm going to do now is we'll spend a bit of time here, because this is really SNOP, the framework of SNOP/IDP, right? So if you look at here and you start up here with the people there, in an FMCG business where you effectively pull and you're trying to, be very much lean. So for example, let's say at Frito-Lay, we were holding about roughly a week and a half's worth of stock. And our goal was to have a 98% DIFOT of order fill rate, shipped on time by SKU. So therefore, to be able to achieve those objectives, we had to very much focus on forecast accuracy and forecasting, right? So the first framework we had was to try and get the right people in the right roles. And effectively, in every supply chain, you'll have a combination of this. For example, I've seen supply chains where demand and supply planners are one role, and then you have production planners and material planners doing one role together, right? Where they do a bit of the production planning and a bit of the materials. And then I've seen supply chains where you've got dedicated demand planners, supply planners, production planners, and materials planners. But the bottom line is, to have an integrated planning framework, you have to have a skill set in planning across these 4 skill sets, right? And I'm sure you guys have all experienced that in some degree. Yeah.
I would think that a lot of these smaller businesses, they've got the one hat wearing all hats.
Yeah.
So, and this is where the challenge comes, because you're also trying to run your business as well.
Yeah.
So you don't have a dedicated role, but in saying that, it to some extent it makes it easier, but then it becomes a little bit more resource, more time consuming. Trying to manage different components. In the case of, say, East Coast, where I suppose looks like the roles are split between production and procurement. So Bruce, do you do the production planning as well?
No, so just looking at that slide, where we are on our journey is trying to get our SNOP team to look at that demand planning stage, the forecast. The production planning is done by Graham through the production planning area. The supply planning for orders, raw materials, and so on is sort of where the procurement side fits in there. Certainly for the raw materials part of it. For the finished products that we manufacture, there's some vague rules around where we are for what we should hold in stock and the quantities that we stock, which obviously feed into what production planning are doing.
Okay.
Right.
We have all those functions. They're just slightly overlapping, I guess, is probably the best way to answer that question.
Yeah. And I think for, say, someone like you, Garth, and your wife, Michelle, it's being aware. I mean, you obviously don't have the funds or the resources to set something up like this, but it's understanding the buckets that you need to look at when you start looking at planning. And I think that's really the important thing here. And for each part, I suppose you've got to put your hat on for demand, say, okay, where's this demand coming from? Is it real? And then translate that back into production, which is what you do And Brian, for you, it's not too dissimilar. I mean, you've only got a couple of SKUs, so it's a lot easier from that point of view. Yeah. So Anthony, as a contract packer, this will be interesting. So how do you manage, do you have any insight in terms of what's coming down the line for you in terms of volumes for different people?
No, generally I get, some of the work we do for Mars is good. They'll give us a schedule which goes out a little bit with POs come through. But generally with Sanitarium and a few other people, it's weekly. I get a weekly POs, and then I've got to try to manage my production planning around that.
Okay, so you do the production planning, and really the demand just comes from your business side, but it's pretty well the companies just feed you directly, I suppose. Yeah,
so our demand comes from our customers, and then will they give it in? I've got a few customers there that are good though. We got a month or more to do their stuff. They'll put it that far out. Sanitarium is weekly, so I'll get some information weekly. Then I'll try to schedule in for our following week for the production.
Okay, right. And Joel, I know Joel's got an online business, and it's pretty well all demand driven. So he gets orders and then and they're paid for, which is great. So cash flow is good, and then he ships them out. But he's looking at maybe potentially starting to look at distributors and wholesalers. So anything from your end, Joel?
Yeah, like we haven't really had time to think through some of these problems that you guys have been talking about, because we make everything to order at the moment. So and we're like really behind. So we haven't even had time to try and hold any stock, which has been a problem because people have to wait quite a while. But it also, we've got a short shelf life on our product, so we can't hold a lot of stock anyway, because like, just don't know if we'd sell it. So that's kind of like I think we're trying to get to that point, trying to bring up manufacturing to be more efficient, so we can start holding stock of our most popular products, and can obviously then fulfill quicker. So that's one of the challenges we've got at the moment, and we're trying to figure out how we get to that next step.
Joel, what's your shelf life on your product?
2 months.
2 months. Okay.
Okay. And Kieran, just to bring you into the conversation, what's your? I mean, you've had some of the experience obviously outside of Ananda. So where are you in terms of this process? Are you the one-man band that does all this?
No, I've delegated that, fortunately. That's so I have it's a sort of hybrid. We're fortunate now with hemp. We obviously the crop comes in at this stage annually, so we store the seed. We do pride ourselves on making to order, so it's as fresh. So as soon as you do anything with that seed, whether it be pressing for the oil or milling the protein or dehulling the seed, we do that relatively frequent. Well, we do every day. It's a just-in-time system, and given the orders, we work with Coles, Woolworths. Woolworths are very good on the forecast, so we have a weekly meeting that the site manager runs, and he brings in the warehouse, the supervisor of the packing room and milling, and the sales. So they'll look at what's in the pipeline and coming down, any major changes to that, because we have Woolworths out for 6 months, and anything that may change that, and they plan and adapt that weekly. So it's a small team that does it across those functions. It's probably 3 or 4 of them, but definitely demand driven. There are challenges because the Coles is through an intermediary, so they just come through, and we still have a week to get them out. So we have to hold a stock of those. But again, we have the fortunate position of it being ambient stable and a 2-year shelf life.
Yeah, make a big difference. 2 years. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things, as you'll notice when you look at some of these boxes, is the more likely you're supposed that it move to the left, the more visibility you get in terms of vision, because you tend to find that if you are stuck pretty much in materials and production planning, your vision is very short term, right? And even potentially even in supply planning. It's when you start focusing on demand planning you start getting more visibility and more vision further out, right? And where that comes in handy is more from a asset utilization and planning perspective as well. So to work out whether you can actually make the volume, right? So if I walk you through this slide, and we'll just start with demand, because I think the right flow is pretty much going from left to right. Effectively, demand is really a box where what you're trying to do is your main input is sales history, right? So the first and most important thing is, at least you've got to have 1 to 2 years worth of sales history to be able to make sense of that sales history, because a year is sometimes not enough because businesses change year on year, and having 2 years, you can at least understand how much you've grown year on year. So that's critical, right? And that's the most important input. Then what you do is you spend time reviewing your history and analyzing your history, because in that history, you find that you'll have some outliers. And those outliers could be supply issues that you've had, where you haven't been able to deliver stock, where you need to adjust that history, because effectively it's going to tell you that you've had no stock for a couple of weeks, and that's not the case. So you have to review your history, understand your outliers. There could be orders that you got that may not repeat themselves, and they could have been large orders. So analyzing your history, reviewing your history, and cleaning it up is probably one of the biggest tasks you want to do before you start thinking about really getting into forecasting, and that gives you pretty much a baseline to start with. Then what you do is that you add an element of, you've got your forecast there, and most of you know this, but you have to then start thinking about where you're a seasonal business, adding that seasonality component. Most of your history should have that seasonality in there. So effectively, if you were to take your history, clean it up, and copy it going forward, that seasonality should come with that history, right? Then the key layer that you need to add is your market intelligence on top of that history to create your forecast, which could be in the form of 1, how much you're going to grow year on year, 2, any marketing activity that you're going to do, and 3, any sales promotional activity that you're going to do. So those 3 components effectively help create a forecast. Now, just to get a feel, how many people are at this stage doing this already?
Around the room. Graham.
Yeah, we have a monthly SNOP where we sit down and go through this. Generally Bruce is the man that's got the sales history, growth rates, a lot of that sort of stuff built in. Normally I slot in and overlay the short-term forecast for the majors, like for Coles and Woolworths, over the top of that, just to provide a bit of extra feedback heading into it. But yeah, this is all sounding a lot like the process we've been through over the last 18 months.
Oh, that's great. How far out, Graham, do you guys forecast?
We have a forecast out for the rest of this year at this point, right, that we're all working off.
Yeah.
Like Bruce sort of touched on before, the random short-term changes in sales environments is where we're struggling to really fine-tune things at this point.
Right. It's pretty much where you got your forecast wrong. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So we look at things like we expected February to be, not nowhere near as busy as it was.
Yeah.
And it seemed like every one of our customers just came out of the woodwork and took stock left, right, and center.
Yeah.
And those types of events for us, we're really struggling to anticipate ahead of time. So it leaves us.
And you know what? You can have the best forecast out there, but then it can be disrupted, like you just said.
Yeah.
And then that disruption can cause quite a bit of chaos going forward as well, because you have to. Yeah, absolutely. Anyone else on?
I might just add to that if I could. So it's Bruce here. In terms of cleaning up the data, it was really important because we went back. I got access to data back, 5 or more years.
Yeah.
But there was changes in what the product was actually sold. So it was sold as units in bottles, and then it got moved to cartons and so on. So the data is usually really messy as it comes through, and it makes it really hard to do the forecast. We are a very seasonal business here as well. The biggest challenge is just obviously things like COVID and those things where you just get these step changes in people locking down half your customer base and so on, that have been really, you don't see it coming, and it just happens, on the weekend when, one of our leaders decides that, everyone should be locked up at home. So, that has a big impact on us. And we have a rolling forecast. So it looks out 12 months, it actually goes out 15, but it rolls every month, we update.
Yeah, I mean, you've touched on a very good piece around the last 2 years, because I mean, that would have affected everyone in terms of the history being abnormal for the last 2 years. I mean, I'm just at the moment doing some consulting for Yates, and Yates being gardening products. They've had a very abnormal 2 years because everyone's at home doing gardening. So it just goes to show that whole piece that you just touched on in terms of, looking at a history, understanding what it is, and then spending time on it, cleaning it up, is important, because otherwise you're just going to create a forecast of bad history. So anyone else on this demand planning piece in terms of where they're at with their journey? Okay, I might just move on. So I mean, ultimately, I know what you're attempting to do with demand planning is to create a forecast. That forecast is very much unconstrained. It has to flow unconstrained into supply planning, and it is the best intelligence based on the information you have at the time, right? Now, like some of you have said, some of you have forecasted till the end of the year. What I've seen in FMCG is you want to keep at least 12 months out, a rolling 12 months. A lot of businesses aim to try and go out 24 months, but to be quite truthful, I haven't seen many businesses focus on anything, from 12 to 24. The forecast is there, it's statistical, but has any intelligence been added to it from month 12 to 24? Not really. It's just there to be able to do some, capacity planning, maybe look at long lead time raw materials in terms of, for example, crops and harvesting and stuff like that, where you have to provide a forecast going out 24 months to some of your suppliers. But for the most part, a rolling 12 months, I've found has sufficed in every business that I've worked in FMCG. So, okay. So effectively, once that forecast flows into supply planning, one of the key things with that forecast, and one of the roles of supply planning, is to grab that forecast and run it through their stock and inventory strategy, right? And effectively, what that does is it really converts an unconstrained forecast into almost a constrained forecast. What can I supply? What do I need to make, right? And effectively, then that's all driven by, like some of you said, in some cases you're making to order, in some cases you're making safety stock. So having a really good inventory strategy or safety stock strategy is critical. Obviously, you need to understand, and one of the most important concepts in supply planning when it comes to strategy of inventory is this concept of ABC. Has anyone come across ABC by any chance? Okay, so really ABC is pretty much a volume analysis of your business. So what you're doing is you're ranking all your SKUs from highest selling to lowest selling. And then what you're doing is you're classifying your top 80% of your volume SKUs, right? And usually there could be 20% of your SKUs that are 80% of your volume. And they're your A SKUs. And then you're classifying your next 15%, which is basically 80 to 95% of your volume, which is the middle SKUs. And that's good. They're your B SKUs. And then finally, your last 5%, your tail, right? And effectively, they're your C SKUs. And the benefit of doing this is one is you understand how long your tail is. So my experience in a lot of businesses is as they grow, the tail becomes extremely long. right? Because effectively you're introducing new products, but you're not thinking about deleting products that are not performing or at the end of their life cycle, right? So having an ABC review at least every 6 months, quarterly, even at least once a year to understand how your SKUs are performing is critical. Now, what I've seen with businesses is you could do this with volume, which is the first starting point, but then eventually when you can start adding value to it, it even becomes more powerful because you can work out what SKUs are profitable and which SKUs are not profitable, and then work out what the fate of those SKUs need to be. But this ABC SKU tells you a lot about your business. One is how SKUs are performing, but two, what should your inventory strategy be? Because clearly, when you think about ABC, with the high volume SKUs, if you are hitting good forecast accuracy, which you should be in some cases, because there could be one or two SKUs that are your primary volume, you would have quite consistent history. And therefore your forecast should be quite stable, right? And I'm purely speaking from an FMCG perspective. I know some of your businesses might have still volatile history with ASQs, and we can talk about that. But with your ASQs, what you want to do is you want to get better forecast accuracy and hold less safety stock. With your B SKUs, you're somewhere in the middle. You're holding enough safety stock to cover your forecast accuracy. And then with your C SKUs, there's no chance you're going to get any forecast accuracy on them at all. So what you want to do is hold safety as much as you can with them. But they're also your most volatile SKUs, so you have to be careful. It's a careful balance, because otherwise you can, especially in the case where you had too much shelf life, if you hold way too much safety stock on your C SKUs, you might end up effectively writing a lot of that stock off. So you have to determine with your C SKUs on whether you adopt a safety stock strategy, or do you even go to a combination of safety stock and make to order, which is something I've seen with a lot of businesses where when you get down to your C, you're holding either safety stock. The safety stock you're holding is so small, but it covers almost a month's worth of forecast. And either you're prepared to write it off, or you're making it to order and you're not holding any safety stock, or you're not going to get hung up on your DIFOT, you know, in terms of delivering it on full, on time, any of that. So any questions on that whole ABC piece and supply planning?
I was going to ask the question, has anyone looked at, and I suppose people have a gut feel of what SKUs sell more than others, but has anyone done a review like that on their business?
We haven't done it, but certainly something which is now noted and we will do.
I mean, you know, it's, to me, it's a very effective tool. It's very underutilized. And a lot of businesses, like even my last stint at Yates, they hadn't done an ABC on their SKUs. And literally, you know, they had 800 different SKUs and their tail was literally 85% of the SKUs were 5% of the volume. So, you know, it's an eye opener around profitability, because what you're doing with these C SKUs is you're effectively, it's costing you a lot in your business, because you're either holding stock and writing it off, or you're changing over in production so frequently because the runs are so small, or you're buying long and writing off your materials, or you're buying short and paying a lot, right? I mean, you guys know this, right? So that kind of ABC review gives you a good framework to really understand your business a little bit in terms of planning.
Yeah, Garth, how do you feel about your products? I mean, you haven't got a big range, but is that an issue for you at the moment, or you just basically made to order?
You know, it's an interesting one for us, because sometimes we think there is a product that we think, sure, we might take that one down, and then suddenly it becomes popular again. Or if people are buying a range of different products for us, it's certainly something that we can slide in. You know, particularly with online orders, we're finding that people sometimes buy some of the products that aren't our most popular, but they just seem to be turning over, just not as fast as the other ones. It's probably because we're small, like we're still relatively small in scale. And this is something that I think we'll probably implement down the track with us.
Yeah.
I think it's keeping in mind that's a good thing about your size of your business, and Joel's the same. It's like when you start growing, you start scaling up, and things start really accelerating in terms of growth. You need to keep an eye on some of these things because these are the profit detractors.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah. And Anthony, from a contract manufacturing perspective, obviously you just have to supply what's given, but I don't know how many of those SKUs that you contract pack, are they giving you headaches, you know, from a production perspective, which inherently could be providing a problem for profitability on those SKUs. Is that something you see in your day-to-day work with contract manufacturing?
Normally not a big problem. The foods products we pack, shelf life's long on it. There is forecast we get out for 12 months, but it's a dry powder for concrete that we process for the packaging. So there's not a great deal of issue that way, I don't think, no.
Okay, good.
And one of the things that, that the ABC framework also does is once you do an ABC analysis and you tag your product either as an A, B, or C, what you can do is you can start measuring your forecast accuracy using your ABC to see what kind of accuracy are you getting on your A products versus your B versus your C, which then again is going to paint a picture about how difficult forecasting is in your business. But also you can then link that up with the inventory strategy. So for example, if you're getting a very poor accuracy on C, which is the case in most cases, then you work out what should your inventory strategy be for your C products. So effectively, you can determine whether you hold inventory or you go to make to order, or do you even keep your products, your C products, because it's costing you more to service your customers with these products. So realistically, being able to do this and tag your products completely helps in the whole planning cycle from demand all the way down to materials, because you understand where each of those products stand in terms of value and volume. Okay.
So Kieran, just with your business, again, I think you do some contract manufacturing as well as your own brand. Again, you've got long shelf life, so probably not too much of a problem, but is that something that might be useful for you?
Yeah, we've sort of done that, but not in a formal way. So I like the idea of doing it formally. We have the same challenges where we contract manufacture someone who goes into Woolworths, and he had word from Woolworths. He wasn't clear whether it was true demand or stock build. And we found out afterwards it was stock build because they were conscious of the AdBlue issue pre-Christmas. So filled their warehouses. So that bit him, and you end up with stock on hand. But with our products, generally, if we're white labeling for someone, it is just make their order and get it through. It's the consistent ones we have to watch, and we're simple in terms of we have 4 main ingredients. It's just the SKUs after that in terms of sizes, but I can hold stock to then push into those SKUs as I need to. But yeah, I like the formal way of doing the ABC.
Yeah, good. And I just see Alex has asked a question there. Aggie, what are your thoughts on approaching forecasting for new lines you don't have history or data?
Yeah, so that's a good question. I mean, look, with a new line where you don't have any history or data, one of the first things in my experience that you do is you try to find a product that it's similar to, and you look at the history, and if it's going to behave in a similar way to something else, then you grab that history, and then you would adjust that history based on what you think the new product's going to do. And then you could use that as a forecast going forward. Where there is no product that it's similar to, you really are depending very much on your marketing and sales intelligence to develop a forecast. Now, what we've found with new products, 2 things. One is understanding what the pipeline is with a product, because when you launch it, as you all know, you have to pipe fill your customers. And then 2 is understanding what your sales rate will be in terms of through your stores, right? That you're selling to your customer stores. So effectively what you do is you come up with a pipeline, then you come up with a sales rate, which pretty much will be end up being a flat line. And then as your history comes in, you start adjusting that flat line to something that's a bit more meaningful. But what I've found better is to just try and go with something that effectively, it could be very similar to, right? Does that answer the question somewhat, or?
Yep. And Brian,
Okay.
you've got a totally different scenario because you've only got really 1 or 2 products. So it's more about just, so there's no ABC, it's what it is. But then it's about just understanding how you build a forecast, where you're going to sell it, and and then it becomes a question of do you need to have inventory? Do you have that contract manufactured, your product? Brian, there, can you hear me, Brian?
Sorry, I missed that.
Yeah, I'm just saying, do you have your product contract manufactured? Does someone make the product for you?
No, I do it myself.
Oh, good. Okay. So you and
yeah, look, just to put that in its right perspective, I got a patent on this product about 10 years ago, right? And because, okay, we had another business, right, which was sort of the main income. So what I did with this is it was more a hobby, right, than anything else. And in saying that, because I had to pay for patents and all that, I decided that I'd try and get some money back. So I went online with it. And like the other gentleman has the online business, all of a sudden the money's coming through PayPal and these outfits, and I had to sort of make the product and get it out to people. Now from there, I've sort of just been doing that. But I actually put the whole thing, because it's a seasonal line, I can spend nearly all winter making up the stuff ready for summer. Now it's probably not a very good example of supply planning, but it works. It has worked fairly well for me. Now I'm now interested in what the other gentleman is saying, is putting in a new line. One of the things I have found, right, with this swimming system is if you use a mask and a snorkel, right, it is a lot easier to swim. Now, I don't think I'll ever get into making masks and snorkels, but I might incorporate it into the sail system, right? So, I'm very interested to see, how much should I buy, or should I just do a sample for the first season? And then, get a history of where sales go with that.
Okay.
Does it make any sense to you?
Yeah, so a bit of a line extension, if you like. So what we would call a line extension. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And I'll welcome Carl, who's just joined us from Honey Heaven. So go, Carl. How you doing, mate? Still there? All right, we'll keep moving along.
All right. Okay. All right. So one of the things, so effectively in terms of supply planning, do your ABCs, work out what your inventory policy should be and your inventory strategy should be. Obviously, you're getting orders in and you're reacting to these orders. And usually one of the most important things that happens here when you have a forecast is where this can, so I've seen where this process can fail is when you have a really good tool that can do supply planning, the orders that come in basically will consume your forecast. So when it consumes your forecast, your demand stays quite stable, right? But I've seen processes where this fails, where you have a forecast there and an order comes in, and because you don't have a consumption process, that order ends up doubling your forecast or increasing your demand at supply planning level, and that can be quite confusing. So that is entirely driven by having a fairly good process in supply planning where you have your forecast and your orders offset that forecast. Okay. So the key thing here with supply planning is once you get these strategies right, obviously what you do in a supply planning process and a supply planning system is it'll create some plan orders. And these plan orders will eventually be the plan orders that production see going out. And obviously the horizon of these plan orders is critical when it comes to production planning. And that horizon is completely driven by how far out your demand planning. So effectively, once you've got these plan orders in place, the key elements of production planning in terms of inputs is one, what are your lot sizes that you're running? Okay, in terms of each run, what's the run size? What are your routings? And what I mean by that is, what line are you running it on? What rate is it going at? And making sure that your rates and your routings and your lines are representative of what you actually achieve, as opposed to being theoretical, because that can really throw off your run times and your capacity planning. And then what sequence you're going to plan at, because obviously, as you guys know, when sequencing is everything when it comes to production planning. So if you sequence things the right way, you'll minimize your changeover and you'll optimize your utilization of that asset, correct? So effectively getting those variables right there to help your production planners plan effectively and firm plan as far out as the process dictates. So for example, in FMCG, what I'm usually familiar with is, you have a rolling 12-month forecast. So the production planner can look out 12 months, but they will only firm plan 4 to 6 weeks, right? In some cases, they might have to firm plan 3 months, but where they have to firm plan 3 months is where there's some long lead time materials required, and those are known, and they will firm plan 3 months. But for the most part, where they're making it in-house, it's usually 4 weeks. And when I mean firm plan it, that is just to get stability here. It doesn't mean you can't violate that firm plan horizon, because you will have to violate it sometimes, because you're going to get orders that effectively didn't match your forecast, and you're going to have to replan that firm horizon. But what you're doing here when you're replanning that firm horizon is you're planning by exception. So you're not replanning everything, you're just planning where you have your exceptions. And that is a very critical piece that is to plan by exception when you're planning through here, and not replanning everything. So that's something that I'm interested to understand is in that production planning piece, what's going on in your businesses. Are you replanning? Are you planning this weekly, daily, monthly? How often are you replanning? Any examples of?
For us on a production planning point of view, we do a weekly plan.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I can never get through a week without having to change it.
Yeah. Yeah, that sounds very familiar.
Yeah, I would like to get through most days without having to change it, but our production planning process is essentially a weekly snapshot of the bigger picture. So there's no point in me being too sort of hardline about it. We get customers that'll order on a Tuesday and they want a delivery for next Monday. Then it makes more sense for me to squeeze it in this week than it does to try and push back and change what the rest of the business is doing. It does create havoc for Bruce, who's ordering materials from time to time.
Yeah.
But for us, it's just a byproduct of the way we do business. So I do look out. I'll often, at the moment, with Easter coming up, I've got a draft plan that I'm putting together for the next 4 weeks, which will just be similar to the weekly plan, as in Bruce calls it a fantasy sheet. It's just looking out slightly further so that we can help allocate labour, resources, pickups, things like that.
I mean, Graham, you hit on a very, very important concept that I should touch on. One is your stability here pretty much depends on a couple of things. One is your stability here.
Yep.
and then your stability here, right? So once you get stability down this chain, this area becomes more stable. Having said all that, if you're not holding a lot of safety stock, then you're going to be doing what you've just said, which is to change your plan on the fly.
Yeah.
If you get your forecast wrong, you're going to be changing the plan on your fly. And then if you're making to order, you're going to be changing the plan pretty much on the fly as you go.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
And we do a combination. We've got make to stock, make to order, and then we do a little bit of white labeling for certain customers as well. So yeah, we can get hit from 3 different directions as different points of that that chain go wrong. Pretty well.
One of the things, sorry.
Yeah, no, you're right.
Yeah, so one of the things that I've experienced with FMCG is you've got all 3 components that you've just highlighted, which is you're going to get your forecast wrong. You're not going to be holding enough safety stock on a SKU. You're going to be making to order on some SKUs. So when you've got that piece going on, it's the good old 80-20 rule, right? If you can get 80% of your forecast right, or even 70% of your forecast right, you've got 70% stability here. Yes, you're going to have to replan maybe 20 to 30%, but the whole aim of the game is to try and give at least 70% stability here. And where you have to replan 30%, again, depends on one or 2 things. Is, if you've got excess capacity, then replanning that will only be a constraint based on your materials availability, right?
Yeah.
Or, if you don't have extra capacity, then it becomes a bit of a juggling act.
Yeah.
Because then something else has to give, correct?
Yeah. Yeah, and as a business, that's what we're finding at the moment. This year in particular, we're rapidly approaching not having excess capacity.
Right.
So a lot of the weekly plans, when we're looking out over periods like with Easter and Anzac Day coming up, are becoming more and more critical for us, which is why we're so interested in fine-tuning S&OP.
Yeah.
I'm running out of capacity for a lot of these changes that are almost unavoidable.
Yeah, and that's a really good point. I mean, that to me is an exception in a supply chain where your capacity is pretty full, which means it puts pressure really here.
Yeah.
To try and focus on getting this right as much as you can.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to be making the wrong stuff here, do you?
No, absolutely not.
Yeah. So this is where demand planning plays a huge piece. 1, it helps you project your capacity going forward. 2, it helps protect your capacity as well. And the other thing also that people have to understand here is you may be going into shutdowns, like we used to go into shutdowns at Christmas, and you have to plan for that. And to be able to plan for that, you have to then, understand what does it mean when your capacity is down for 2 weeks in December or a week in January. What do you do upstream in November prior to getting to December to be able to enable you to do that shutdown, correct? So
yeah. Well, we've actually got something like that coming up. We're having a planned shutdown the back half of May.
Yeah.
Just for a week. Well, we hope a week at this point.
Yeah.
And we were starting the planning for that last month.
Yeah. And you will find that once you get this stream happening correctly, you can start making calls, right? Once you start getting more confidence around your forecasting and seeing your forecast accuracy improving, then you can start making calls on what you can pre-build here.
Yep.
Versus the ones that are risky to pre-build, right? And then you hold less inventory. So forecasting and forecast accuracy can be a significant benefit in understanding those variables to helping with production planning and consequently materials as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay. Any questions so far on this slide all the way up to production planning, if anyone's got one? All right. Okay. So the key thing here, obviously what keeps your materials planning horizon stable is how far out you firm plan. So if you're firm planning out a week, then your materials planners only have a week of stability and they have to be reactive beyond a week. If you're firm planning out 4 weeks, then you have a bit of stability here with materials planning. Now, the key with materials planning, no different from supply planning, comes down to your inventory policy and step strategy. how much safety stock you choose to hold here can help this production planning process, because where you're making to order, you want to hold some stock here. Where you're making to stock, you might choose to hold less stock here. Where you got long lead times, you got to hold more stock here. So again, having an inventory policy here is critical, because at the end of the day, if you know, in your case, Graham, where you've got a line that's full, the last thing you want to do is run out of materials, right? So you need to make sure you have the materials to support this line, and you want to make sure you have the materials to support this line, maybe for your A SKUs, because if you make your A SKUs, you're not going to write them off. You're most likely going to sell them, and you can hold some inventory of them. So that's again how ABC can tie up through this whole thing as well. Yeah. Any questions? Okay, so realistically, when you understand this process from demand down to materials, tying this whole process together is the S&OP framework, which basically is being able to effectively create a forecast, create a supply plan, create a production plan, and then create a materials plan. And then effectively what you do in your S&OP framework is, in an FMCG business, is you would start your month off effectively spending time here in the first week, getting a demand plan influence as best as you can. And then by about the middle of the second week, you'll have what's called a demand review process, where you'll sit down with your key stakeholders here. And I know your businesses are small, so you're not going to have a massive process like FMCG. But what you would do is you'd sign off on your forecast, your latest forecast, by the second week of the month. So that way, supply planning can have some confidence on your latest forecast, and so can production planning and materials. You sign off on that, and then you send that down to your supply planning to do. Then the supply planners would spend pretty much most of the middle of week 2 and week 3 forming a supply plan and sending it down to the production plan, so that supply and production plan can understand what that means when you constrain a demand plan. And then what you'd have it by the end of week 3 is effectively a supply review, to just understand where are your exceptions that are coming out of your demand plan that need to be highlighted to your stakeholders, to, you know, and then what are you going to do about, you know, the moment you constrain an unconstrained forecast, you're going to have some problems. And what are your solutions for those problems? Are those problems that you're going to have to just deal with by talking to your customers? Anyway, bottom line is understanding exceptions with a supply review. That's what supply review happens at the end of week 3, because it's looked at an unconstrained demand plan and it's constrained it. Then what you do is, once you've understood where your exceptions are in supply planning, what tends to happen in FMCG is the last week of the month, you have a business review where all you're doing is going through your unconstrained forecast and then working out what your constrained forecast is and where's the gap, what are your exceptions, and what does it mean, so that you have a high level view of your entire business plan. And obviously when you talk about S&OP, you're talking very much in cases, because cases can be understood in each of these boxes, except when you get to here, you're starting to deal in different units of measure, obviously. But when you then start talking about value, that's when integrated business planning takes over from S&OP, where when you're having a business review, you're really starting to talk about dollars. You know, what's my gross sales? What's my profit? What's my margin? What's my net sales? And then you can understand, for example, I'll give you a classic example at Greens, where we used to make microwave popcorn, and that line was 100% utilized most of the year. So we were running it around the clock. And every time that line broke down, we had volume that pretty much had to go into overtime. So effectively, when we get to a business review, what we would analyze is our promotional program for microwave popcorn, because if that promotional program was not profitable, there was no point sweating this asset in the microwave popcorn line. if you're not going to get any return on that promotional program. So that was a key decision that we had to always have at our business review for, that's just an example. So, yeah. Any questions on this? Now, one of the other things I want to touch on here when it comes to the systems layer is obviously some of these processes are going to have different systems driving it. What you find in FMCG is you have advanced planning systems that help do all this: demand, supply, production. And the only handoff that we have to a transaction system is in materials. Why? Because a lot of your procuring happens in a transaction system. So it's easy to pass your plan orders and firm plan orders to that transaction system, and then let the materials, the MRP process, take over here. I've seen a lot of businesses effectively do some of this in Excel as well. Some of these steps in Excel. I've seen demand planning be done in Excel. And at sometimes, in some cases, I've seen the whole supply chain being done with advanced planning systems. So that's just a quick touch on that. When it comes to reporting systems, for the most part, Excel plays a really good role in reporting. I mean, in every level, you can use Excel to understand, your capacity, your materials availability, your supply plan, and your demand plan. Even in Excel can be done, and we'll show you that. And even your revenue can be understood in Excel. Not the best solution as you grow as a business. A lot of these FMCG businesses, once they start growing, Excel becomes very unsustainable because the power of forecasting is very much, I'll talk about this in the next slide, but it's all about being able to build a forecast up, but then be able to view a forecast top down, okay? And that's probably a good segue into the next slide. So anyone got any questions on this?
I just want to make a comment that, like for the smaller businesses, it's just understanding these processes, which invariably, you'll be doing yourselves. But have that mindset of just looking at the demand, and then how you're going to make it, and then what materials which you're doing now. But I suppose just try to put some structure around it so you understand how it fits. And as you grow and you start expanding, then these processes will become more and more important to make sure you can do it very effectively. We see a lot of businesses growing very quickly, and they just start falling over as soon as the growth comes along because they don't have the processes in place. So the important thing is to understand that there's a process there, and use it where you can. And when if a small business, you don't have the manpower, but you can still go through the process yourself, and be comfortable that you've got what you need to do to supply your customers. So yeah.
I mean, the most important thing with this is it is very much a pull process, because it's forecast driven. Two is there has to be a flow between demand, supply, production, and material, and they have to be very much integrated. If they're islands, then you're going to end up with lots of inventory. So that's why it's important to integrate it. So, okay, cool. Okay, so the next slide I want to get into is a bit more about demand planning. So really getting, into that first box. And again, the most important element of any demand planning, as I've said before, is your history, right? So effectively getting 2 years minimum history is valuable. The reason I say 2 years is I know for a fact that if you go under 2 years, you don't have enough. If you go over 2 years, it may be noise because your business might have changed quite a bit. So you'll know best. You'll know best whether it's 2 or 3 or 4 even, because if your business has changed a lot, then you don't want that. Then that year 3 and year 4 might only impede on your ability to review that history, right? So minimum 2 years if you can. Even if you got 1 year, it's better than nothing. But if you can start with 2, that usually is a good foundation. The next step then is obviously taking that history. Once you've looked at that history and cleansed it, removed any exceptions, adjusted any unseasonal exceptions, and or any supply exceptions that you had across the year, done that cleansing, you then can pretty much copy that history as a starting point for your baseline forecast. So that's with no assumptions, just taking last year's history that's been cleansed and saying that's my starting point as my baseline forecast, right? Now that baseline forecast is going to have seasonality in some of your cases where that history has seasonality already built in. And that's the benefit of starting by copying that history as your starting point, because you've got that seasonality built in. Now, when you look at some of that forecast, you'll also find that probably as part of that history, you've got promotions in there as well. If you have promotions in there, that's great if those promotions are going to repeat. If those promotions are not going to repeat, then you have to kind of strip those promotions out as part of your baseline forecast. But if those promotions are going to repeat, then that history is relevant. If those promotions are going to happen again, but at a different time, then you just have to strip it out of that month that it happened and move it to the month where it will happen going forward. So that's a little bit of work required there to try and, get that forecast relevant. Then you start applying things like your sales and marketing intelligence, which is, really how much is your business going to grow by? And the next slide that I show you this will become a little bit more relevant, but effectively, how much is your business going to grow by? What's your NPD strategy? Because you'll have new products as part of your marketing intelligence. When are they going to be launched? How do you forecast? How do you create a forecast for them? And any other intelligence you can add here, but usually it's growth plus promotional intelligence plus any marketing intelligence there. Any questions on this so far? How are you guys going in terms of these three layers? Who's sitting where? Has anyone gotten up here to sales and marketing intelligence into their current forecast? Or how many of you have enough history to even start this whole forecasting process?
Hi, it's Kieran here. Hemp Foods is only 2 years old in itself, so we're in an interesting place. We try and look at some sales and marketing intelligence from the health food category. But yeah, we've just come in on the 2 years history, but we should be in growth as well. So there's routine customers come through, but obviously we're looking at the sales and marketing intelligence as well as we're driving product into the category as well. So it's quite an interesting space we're trying to work in with this.
All right. I mean, Karen, one of the things, like you just said, is if you're only a business that's 2 years old, you'll have a lot of short history products. And those are usually the hardest ones to forecast, because if your history is short, you don't even have a full year sometimes, right?
That's right. Yes. Yeah.
What do you do with those? Do you just forecast a flat line, or do you have a line and a trend?
Yeah, I look to where I'm driving growth. Yeah. And I am fortunate in the sense I haven't had SKU proliferation yet. Yeah. And I can work off 4 core ingredients and then flex on the final consumer or bulk products. We do wholesale as well. So yeah, the history is important, but not as relevant. I'm looking at where I'm going and the people I'm talking to, and then trying to feed that back to the factory in terms of any capacity planning we need to do and where we need to see the growth.
That's great. Are you doing that at a product level?
We are, yes.
Yes. Okay, great.
Not, again, as I say, I can, the dehulled seed and hemp seed oil, for example, I can do it at the level of the lines to produce those and then worry about whether that's in a 250 ml or 1,000 litre IBC.
Right. Okay. So you're probably doing it at a group level.
Yes.
like a family level. Yeah,
That's right. Yeah.
yeah, that's great. That's a good piece. That's very relevant to the next slide I've got, really. So, you know, I mean, at the end of the day, once you've added these layers to this forecast, the most important thing is that you have a consensus forecast at the end of it, which literally in an FMCG business is a forecast that sales and marketing are happy with. More sales than marketing. I mean, marketing, you know, come into this piece really when it comes to new products or any marketing insights that they have regarding the category that they're in. But otherwise, it's really sales and promotions that play a bulk part of your forecast. The bottom line is when there's a consensus for that month, there is a sign off on that forecast, and it's the best information you have for that month so far in the cycle. Any questions? Okay. All right. Now this is relevant to what Karen was saying. So in building a forecast bottom up, obviously what's critical is, you know, you're going to start at the lowest level at a product customer level, right? Because everyone's got products and everyone's got customers in most cases. So for example, in this case, you've got, you know, a water cracker natural for Coles. That's a product. Obviously your history is going to be at that level, and you're going to be able to create a forecast hopefully at that level, right? But as you move up that level to a product level, what you're doing is effectively then aggregating your history for that product across all your customers and creating a history for at a product level, right? Which then you can create a forecast at a product level potentially as well. So and then you can move up this. So this is what I would call a product hierarchy, right? So effectively, a hierarchy enables people to view a forecast at different levels, and at the same time potentially forecast at different levels. So then as you build up your water cracker natural, you might then say wafer family, subfamilies, wafers, right? Which is all your crackers together, which I think, Karen, you were saying you were dealing in milliliters or liters?
For the oils, liters and milliliters.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah, we have grams and then kilograms.
So, so you could then effectively then start viewing things at a wafer level or a subfamily level. And then finally, at the top, you go to a family level, which is all crackers, you know, not just the wafer ones, but just total cracker category. So what this does is it helps you grab history at a lowest level and effectively aggregate that history up by defining your product hierarchy, right? And saying, well, I've got a water cracker natural. My next level up is water cracker natural, not by account. And then my next level up is just wafer, and then a cracker. What this gives you is the flexibility to be able to, one, look at your history at different levels, but at the same time also look at your forecast at different levels. Because what that does is where you've got products that have short history, that have that are small products, which are difficult to forecast, you can start looking at it at a higher level and start thinking, is my category growing? Because it'll be too difficult to look at, is my product growing? Is my category growing? Is my family growing? Is my product growing, right? Across all accounts. So it gives you different dimensions to review history and review and even forecast at, where you might find it way too difficult in your business to create a forecast at this level. So I just want to spend a bit of time on this slide because it is a concept that I've found in a lot of businesses, especially in even FMCG, where they get their product hierarchy probably not reflecting how they want to forecast. And there's a complete misalignment in the whole forecasting process because they haven't focused on this hierarchy. Has anyone gone through this concept before, and does everyone understand it?
No, I don't.
Okay. So I'll show you a working example of it. So
I'm just going to say for Brian, it's because you've only got one or two products.
Yeah, that's right. It'll be hard.
You're pretty well.
Yeah.
Your family is your two products.
Yeah, you're at this level, Brian. I mean, you know, I'm just thinking for businesses where you have about 50 to 100 products, categorizing your product and creating a hierarchy.
Oh, yeah, okay, I got you.
You know, will make your life simpler because it'll help you understand your business at different levels, and at the same time maybe potentially forecast at different levels as well, or influence your forecast at different levels. Okay. All right. Okay, so I don't know. Can you guys see this slide by any chance? Is that too little or?
It's a bit little down the bottom.
It is it?
Yeah.
Okay, let me just see if I can switch to. Can you see that?
That's worse, I think.
It's worse.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, I'll go back to the slide then.
We'll go back. We're going to send this through anyway.
Yeah, we'll send it through. All right. So what I've got down here below, I'll just describe it to you. Is I've got sales history for 2015. I'm using 2 years consecutively. It doesn't matter which 2 years you use, and 2016. So the purple row is 2015's history. The orange row is 2016 history, which happens to be the year that we were in. So we've got only history up to the end of August, which tells me that we were in the month of September for that year. But we got we got history going back in 2015, then we got history in 2016, and then we've got in the blue line a forecast that has been created for the full year for the year that we're in. Now, you'll notice here that one of the things I do is I tag my forecast. Every month that I create a forecast, I would tag that forecast as either, if I'm in the month of April and it's the month we're going through, it'll be the April forecast. Then we do one in May, it'll be May and March. So what that does is it enables me to compare my forecast each month to say, what did I forecast last month, the month before, and what am I forecasting now? It just gives me a net change, to understand how much has my forecast changed from my last month, which is extremely powerful because when you're forecasting every month and you're making changes every month, understanding net change from the previous month is probably the most important exception. Because if your forecast hasn't changed, then there's no point really having to have a conversation because you've already had that conversation in the previous month. It's really your planners need to understand what's changed from last month to this month, and then they can focus on those net changes and really focus on the exceptions, right? So I used to tag these each month. But what that does is really, it's just taking a copy of your history, putting that into your forecast, influencing that forecast based on the layers that I've described in the previous slide, and then coming up with a volume forecast at a unit level for the full year, right? For that particular account and for that particular product, right? And then the beauty of this is once you start getting really sophisticated with this, you can have a price tab that you can look up for that particular account because you've got a retail price that you store at an account level. And then you can start converting your unit forecast potentially into revenue, right? And that can be done by month. I've got a total here, but that revenue is there by month. And then another thing you can do is once you start having unit forecast and you've got a production rate, you can then convert that unit forecast into machine hours or labor hours or whatever hours you deal with. So you can start understanding how many hours worth of work you've got for that product. And then that can become part of a bigger picture of understanding your utilization on the line that it's on, because those total hours can be grouped by line, which I'll show you. So effectively, when you come up a layer from product customer to product, you can see now that product's been aggregated from a customer to a product level. And I've got my forecast now for the full year by product, right? And then on top of that, I want to now go to a family level, and I'm going to add up all my products, right, for crackers, right? And effectively, I've got all these products now that consist of crackers, and I've got now not only my sales history for 2016 and 2017, I've got my forecast in my light blue bar as well next to them. And that, to me, having a visual of that is critical, because a picture speaks 1,000 words. So you can see whether you've got you come in here and you know that you oversold your forecast in January, you undersold your forecast in February, so that would be maybe just a phasing thing that happened in the last week of January versus the first week of Feb. You were pretty close to your forecast in March. You were spot on with your forecast in April. But also you can see how your year is going against last year. And then you can also see what your forecast looks like for the balance of year, right? So the bottom line here is you've got a full year forecast and a total out here. And you can also measure that forecast against your prior years in terms of variance. And you can also measure your forecast against a budget, if you have a budget, right? In most cases, in FMCG, you have a budget as a target as well. But this goes to show how using Excel, you can still bottom up build a forecast using a product hierarchy. Any questions on that? I'll just show you how flexible. Now, can you guys see that?
What are we looking at, Augie?
Excel. Am I sharing the right screen?
No, it's got the old
let me share it.
The PowerPoint.
Let me just.
So we're actually, I'm talking to Augie about trying to develop this sheet for us in a very simplified version of it. There's a lot of work that goes into the spreadsheet, but something that could be made available to people.
Yeah.
Can
you see that now?
Yeah, I can see that now. Yeah.
All right, good. So that was the example I had on the slide, right? So effectively here, that's your item level forecast that was built by sales history, and you can see the product hierarchy here. How I'm going to categorize this product. The category is biscuits. The family is crackers. It's a wafer. It's a subfamily of wafer. The brand is water thins, and it's sold in retail, and my account's Coles, right? And you can see here, I've got multiple accounts. So I could literally take that filter out, and there's all my different accounts that I'm selling that product in, right? Okay. Now, grabbing that and then coming up here, you can see here, I've translated that into dollars. And you can have a dollar by month forecast. And then again, I've translated that into machine hours using a production rate tab down here. So I can understand what my utilization at line level is, right? So bottom line, when you do this bottom up, is you can end up with something like this, where you can then start saying, all right, that's my one product that I'm looking at, my forecast for my whole product. But let's just look at, that's my total cracker forecast, right? And that's my cracker wafer forecast if I want to go down to that level. If I want to go down to just my Coles brand forecast. What I'm trying to show you here and demonstrate is once you bottom up build a forecast, you can start viewing it top down. And that's extremely powerful, because you can start making decisions on the bigger picture without having to get caught up in the granularity. Because what tends to happen when you look at product level stuff is you can end up with a lot of noise at a product level. So looking at it at a higher level can certainly take away some of that noise. And then the other benefit is looking at it in revenue. So, once you can bring price in and start using price, you can convert your unit forecast, for that one product or for the total cracker segment in revenue. So you can even get down to, see, that's my revenue forecast for that just one product, right? And then the other beauty here is I've got, because I'm tagging this by line, I can have a look at what my revenue forecast is for that production line, right? And even better, I can come here and say, what is my utilization for that line? Because I'm tagging all that demand by line, because I've converted it into hours and shifts for that line, or, you know, for different lines, right? So I just wanted to show you, just using Excel and bottom-up building a forecast, some of the things you can do with that information, right? Yeah. Any questions on? I mean, Frank's right. We will sit here, and if you guys find this Excel file useful, we can work out how to simplify it for your businesses and make it easy to use, for sure. But any questions on this before I go back to the PowerPoint? Okay.
It's mindful of time.
Questions, but there's a lot of work that's behind it. It's very impressive.
Thank you. Thanks.
Yeah, there's a lot of work, and that's why we've got a lot to do to try to set it up in a simple way.
Yeah. It's just, unfortunately, it's a series of lookups. So it's really trying to put Excel to its limits on that one. And you can see with something, you know, with bigger businesses, you can really push Excel, and that file ends up becoming really big. So look, this is the last slide I have. Obviously, I mean, the one takeaway for me, I would say, is, you know, just something that I coined. You know, it's so much easier to complicate something that should be simple than it is to simplify something that is complicated. So, you know, try to keep it simple, and it will work. It's an approach that we've always taken. Approach I try to take every day is to keep it simple. You can see here with the phone, it's really become complicated. Try going back to that. I don't think we can. So you know, effectively, when it comes to planning, try to keep it simple is what I would try to do, process wise. Any questions?
Any no questions?
Any thoughts?
Thoughts, ideas, thinking?
Did people find this useful in somewhat, or is it stuff that you've seen?
Oh yeah, very useful. Yeah.
I mean, is it stuff that you can apply? Do you think you can apply? I mean, tell me, what are your challenges you think would be to try and apply something like this? I'd love to hear that.
I think the biggest issue is, just from our own experience, is actually you got to bring everybody in the business along, so that they have the same level of understanding. So you've got to work your way through it. There's an awful lot of work that goes into cleaning up the data and everything at the start of the process, to make it work, and then getting people to understand how to read and interpret the data so that it actually applies to their functional area, is a real challenge. But you know, it's a really good business practice that everyone, I'd recommend, certainly needs to go down the path of understanding and implementing for, you know, what they do.
And Bruce, you just hit the nail right on the head. It is very much bringing everyone along on the journey. It's a long journey, but, you know, you get there in stages, like you all know. So, you know, you start off with production planning, then you evolve to maybe supply planning, and then eventually put demand planning on, and then you can integrate the whole thing, right? And then you can start bringing a layer of business planning to it. So yeah, it is very much a journey. It's not one that you're gonna, you know, you have to go through it in stages. So
yeah, and for the smaller businesses, I think it's great to see where you can go. But you know, and if you have that mindset from now, when you're, you know, just starting up and moving forward, like I said earlier, it's about, as you grow, you're going to rely more on process to ensure you're stable, because where a lot of businesses fall over is they have fantastic opportunities, but their business processes fall over.
I think one of the things I would encourage you to do is to look at your data, like Bruce, you've said, look at your information, and you know, your businesses are rich in information. think about how you want to structure that information, because that structure is going to help you look at your business top down if you get that structure right. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I think the value as well is it brings it removes some of the subjectivity out of the process, because typically in my experience, sales and marketing will be quite optimistic about forecasts.
Yeah,
operations
100%.
a bit more pragmatic and maybe pessimistic to some extent, and that can create tensions. So having a process where there's a clear sort of data-driven process allows everybody to sort of understand, sort of objectively how the business is performing and make more strategic decisions rather than sort of sometimes emotional decisions. So there's real value in that. And even for an individual, without trying to navigate different perspectives across a team or different functions, even for an individual, it allows you to look at your business more objectively and remove some of the emotion and sentiment out of things. So it's really powerful that way.
Yeah, and you know what? You've again a very great point you raised. One is businesses tend to over forecast. Every business I've been in has a positive bias. They're always overcalling their number. So it's up to the whole process, the business review, to keep it real and bring some objectivity back to the process. So that's why we look at our forecast accuracy and we say, look, you know what? The last 6 months in a row, we've been calling our number up by 5%. Let's start thinking about the next 6 months and bringing it down if we're not hitting our number. I mean, it's all about understanding, your KPIs and measuring your forecast accuracy, and then, aligning your behaviors with how your KPIs are going. And absolutely right, Alex. It's about bringing objectivity to a very subjective, very gray process. It's about making a gray process more black and white. It'll always be gray because it's a forecast, but yeah.
I think again, for the smaller businesses, for all businesses, the other thing we haven't really spoken a lot about is the importance of these numbers you come out of the forecast for future investment. So when you start looking at capacity, you start looking at maybe potentially move factories because you don't have the space. Having these sort of numbers, you'll start getting visibility 12 months out, at least. And if you do a rolling forecast, then that's really important. So it becomes an integral part of the process in your business plan, because you can't have a business plan without having gone through the process and understand where your sales are going to come from. So to your point, Brian, I think in the email you sent me, you're looking to put the business plan. How do you go forward? So looking at what you've sold so far, and if it's seasonal, so that's good. And maybe the way you produce it during the winter and sell it during the month, that's fine as well. Understanding how much you can sell, and if you've got some intelligence around adding a snorkel or face mask to the product to get it. Give it some more legs, and how's that going to improve the sales volume? So these are the sort of things you can plan out.
I really appreciate what having you told me there. Yeah, I've got a better understanding, especially if if I do decide to expand. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, no, it's good.
I mean, one of the things, Frank, you've touched on very clearly is, yes, a 12-month forecast is absolutely important because it gives you a rolling year's worth of visibility. But once you come up with a 12-month forecast, it's not that hard to convert that to a 24-month forecast, because you take that 12-month forecast and put some assumptions over it at a very high level and say, I'm going to grow these products by X%. And you can create a 12 to 24-month forecast if you want to do some asset planning further out.
Yeah.
Garth,
are you there?
Yes, I'm still here. Yes.
Yeah. So Garth, I think I was just thinking about where you guys are at and where you want to go, and I think sitting down, going through this process will be very useful and sort of cement some of those investment decisions if you decide to go down that track.
Oh yeah, absolutely. For us, the things that I sort of took away from this today were just the importance of planning, particularly with the people that are involved with the business and taking it forward. and also making sure that our processes are going to be implemented into that, whether it be demand driven or supply driven, and obviously getting the forecast right for us. I mean, that's going to be very important, I think, and making sure that you look at your sales history and your data.
Yeah, look, and some of you have got customers that might be prepared to share a forecast with you, which again is very that's another level of intelligence that you can overlay on this. So yeah, so look, I think whether you're selling online or selling at a farmer's market or selling to a Coles or Woolworths, I mean, these are all opportunities and they're all sales, and it's just how you capture them. But more importantly, if you're looking to grow, how you're going to grow those different channels and separate channels out. So you know, okay, well, I'm selling to IGA. I've got 2 IGA stores today. I'm aiming to get another 4 in the next 12 months. So I can take that history that I've got for those 2 IGA stores and extrapolate that out, for another 3 as a starting point, and so there's all that's the benefit. So look, I'm mindful of time. If there's any other questions from anyone, Sabrina, I haven't tapped on you, but I know you were just listening and watching what was being said. And Anthony, look, as a contract manufacturer, you're guided, I suppose, by what comes down the line from your customers. But the good thing is, you've got long shelf life products, but you've also got, like Sanitarium providing your weekly orders. So that's it's a good way to go, because sometimes you don't know from some contract manufacturers don't have any visibility until an order lobs up and then you're in trouble. So
I mean, I'm a little bit surprised about Sanitarium only providing weekly orders, because they've got a very good forecasting process, and they do have a very good forecasting tool, very similar to the one we put into Greens, Frank. So they're the ones so they should have good visibility going forward. There must be other factors that they must be considering in terms of.
Do they share that forecast with you, Anthony?
No, they don't. We only do 2 products for those. One that goes into Aldi and one that currently goes into Costco. So I guess we're only looking at 2 lines. So they just give us what we need for those 2 lines. What they
so you don't.
That explains it, Anthony, because it's a Costco line and an Aldi line, so they would not know probably forecast wise.
Yeah.
What the visibility of because Aldi are not very good for sharing their forecast, and neither are Costco. So
yeah. Okay, well, look, we'll close it off. I just want to thank Agi again. Look, hopefully it was insightful for everyone. And look, like I said, we'll have the recording available. We're going to work with Agi to come up with a simpler version of the spreadsheet which you guys can use. It'll be available, and please reach out if you need a hand, because we've got we can give you some support in this area. So I will send out an email just reminding you to complete the survey link if you could. That would be good, and with all the other necessary information that we said we're going to provide, including the presentation. So thanks everyone. Thanks for your time, and hopefully it's been useful.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
See you guys.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye.
See you, Kieran.
See you, mate. Bye.